making some awful jokes about black people being criminals and cotton pickers. I, 25F, went to my friend's wedding tonight and was seated next to a mutual, Beth, 30F, and her husband Josh, 29M. We used to all be in the same friend group, but Beth and I had a falling out a few months ago, so I hadn't seen them since. I noticed Josh was being pretty passive-aggressive towards me tonight. For example, when he got up to get a drink, he asked everyone except me whether they would like one as well and made it a point to skip over me. I didn't take offense to this, but I did notice him doing things like that all night. At one point though, the whole table was cracking jokes and Josh kept making racially charged comments for laughs. He was making some awful jokes about black people being criminals and cotton pickers. I put up with all the other stuff, but the comments really upset me, especially considering my boyfriend is black. As everyone was laughing, I said, "I don't get the joke. Can you explain it to me?" Everyone at the table went kinda quiet and he awkwardly said he was just making a joke. I didn't back down and said, "Yeah, I just don't get it." Why is it funny? It was awkward until someone changed the topic. The bride and groom weren't around for this conversation, so I just got up to say goodbye and went home. After I left, I started getting texts from other people in the friend group saying I made everyone uncomfortable and I shouldn't have said anything because it's a wedding and they were just having fun. Beth went off on me, saying she and her husband didn't know my boyfriend is black since they never met him and he couldn't make it tonight, so it was really unfair of me to embarrass him when he's really a good guy. I do feel kind of bad for shaming him in front of people, especially at our friend's wedding, but he was really getting on my nerves and felt defensive of my partner. So Aida for embarrassing someone at a wedding for making racist jokes? Next story. So I, 24M, am getting married this summer to my beautiful fiancé Holly, 25F. I am an only child. My mom and dad I always felt like had a very good relationship from the outside. But when I was 14 my mom cheated on my dad with a family friend. Absolutely broke my dad, and my mom became almost unrecognizable afterwards. She was a great mom and always felt like she was affectionate with my dad. But she became cold right after everything came out. My parents tried counseling but my dad couldn't look at her. The divorce was horrible. My mom went after my dad so hard. Tried to get majority custody, tried to financially fuck him over too. And on top of everything she kept dating the family friend. I told her from day one that I wouldn't be dealing with her anymore if she kept dating that guy. So around 15 I started living with my dad full-time. He was still in a vulnerable spot. But together we started working out, and doing things to keep him busy. It took years but my dad got back to his old self. I spoke to my mom occasionally even though she lived a couple blocks away. She would call all the time and try to meet up. But I basically told her to fuck off and to start a new family. Because I had no interest in being around someone like her. Well, 9 months ago me and Holly got engaged. My dad asked if I planned on letting my mom know. I told him I didn't and I wouldn't be inviting her to the wedding. Well, I guess he took it upon himself to call my mom up and inform her. And then they started talking. 3 months ago I show up to my dad's and him and my mom are there. They sit me down and tell me that they have been dating. I called him dumb, pathetic and reminded him of all the things mom did to him. How she's probably only back because she's out of money and places to go. My mom tried to intervene and I told her to STFU. I told my dad that he can do whatever he wants. But I'm not gonna sit by and support it. And we worked together to get him back. So I felt like he wasn't valuing himself or me. My mom has been trying to get an invite to the wedding. But I told my dad it's simple. Your invite is a solo invite with mom. A+1 if you bring any other human being. My dad is distraught, according to relatives. Because he feels like he has to choose between his only kid and his wife. I told my dad that it was gonna be like this from now on. Any holiday would be a solo invite. I wouldn't be bringing my grandkids around his house if my mom was there. So he needed to think carefully. My mom's side of the family has started trashing me. I told them if they couldn't understand my position then they better not show up either. So I uninvited all the relatives that were giving me shit on my mom's side. My fiancé is totally understanding. But we want to make sure so we made this post. Next story. Throwaway and longtime lurker, First-time poster here. I should preface this by saying that my 27F sister, 33F, pawns her children, 2F and 10 months F, off to other people to watch at any chance she gets. When I say pawns off, I mean she doesn't even ask first before just leaving her children and walking off. Be it to our 16-year-old cousin on big family holidays or our mom whenever she visits. Yesterday, I was due to see my mother lives in for a visit and to give her a few gifts that I had for her. In the morning, I got a call from my mom asking me if I could go and pick up a dress and earrings that my mom had lent to my sister. When I got there, my sister gave me the dress and earrings and offered me a quick cup of coffee while her babies were playing in their bouncer chairs. I accepted as my mom doesn't mind what time I rock up at hers. After we chatted for a bit, my sister got up and left me alone in the room with the babies. I waited for a moment and then saw my sister go out the front door saying, "I'll be back soon." Before I could even open my mouth to reply, she's out the door and getting in her car to drive off. I called my mom and told her everything. I could tell that my mom was getting worked up with everything I said to her. My mother and I spend a few moments bitching about my sister and we come incredibly close to calling CPS. I then decide to do something a bit petty and stupid. I warn my mom about what I'm going to do and she tells me it probably isn't a good idea but doesn't try to stop me. I spent the next 3 hours looking after the kids. Eventually, I saw my sister's car coming up the road. I put the babies where she left them and then walked out the back door as my sister came up to the front to make her think that her house had been empty apart from the kids. Predictably, my sister called me, furious and screaming about how I abandoned her kids for hours and how one of them was forced to suffer with a dirty diaper. Apparently she soiled herself as I was leaving and I hadn't noticed, and how shocking my behavior was. I told her that she abandoned her kids and asked her why she assumed I was up for babysitting. She screamed some more and hung up. When I got to Mom's, my mom informed me that my sister called her to complain about me and my mom covered for me and asked my sister, "At what point did my name agree to babysit for you?" You remember, I mentioned our 16-year-old cousin? Well, today, I found out that my sister also went complaining to his father and he gave her a piece of his mind as well. My sister called up my mom again and this time began crying about how her own family hates her and about how hard it is to be a single mother. Her husband works abroad most of the year, so this is practically the case. I feel like I've created a knock-on effect on the whole family, but my mom and uncle keep reassuring me that my sister got what she deserved. Next story. Okay, so here's the situation. My fiancé's parents, my in-laws, aren't approving of our relationship. We asked why, tried to work it out but to no avail. The drama started once we announced our engagement and sent out wedding invitations. My fiancé's parents lost their invitations after threatening to show up and ruin the wedding. But since the wedding will be held at my house, then I won't guarantee that provoking their invitations will stop them. Matter of fact, that made them more pissed. I kept stressing about that, and since our budget could barely cover wedding expenses, I figured hiring security guards won't be possible. I met up with my sister and her cop husband, we're not close, days ago at my parents' house. I told them what's been going on with my in-laws and asked my brother-in-law if he could secure the wedding and stand watch from start to finish to make sure no shit shows or interruptions will happen. For some reason, the room went radio silence. My brother-in-law just stared at me and then covered his mouth like he was pissed or something. I explained again how much of wackos my in-laws are basically, and I'm just trying to make sure my wedding won't get ruined. He kept quiet, but I told him it's my only way and he perhaps should say yes because of my financial situation. My sister asked me to follow her to the kitchen, then went off on me saying I went way out of line and should stop treating her husband as my servant, and expecting him to do whatever I want just because I felt bold enough to ask. She also said she was appalled that I'd even consider making my brother-in-law play security guard and not attend the wedding like any other decent guest. I argued that I only asked because he has background when it comes to taking extra precautions, and also I cannot afford to hire a professional security. That would be a bad idea cause my friends will start asking questions. But if it's my brother-in-law who's experienced in dealing with these kind of situations and knows how to de-escalate, then that's a win-win. She said I offended him and disrespected him and her as well, then told me he doesn't have to do anything for me and my problems are mine to deal and not his to worry about. I said fine, but I won't be welcoming him at the wedding then. She berated me saying I'm being an opportunist and walked out. They left shortly and my parents said I really shouldn't have asked, then pressed the issue by saying brother-in-law isn't welcome to the wedding if he says no. Next story. Just a year ago, my sister, Chloe, 18F, used to be the golden child, and, while I, 15F, wasn't ignored completely, it was obvious my parents were prouder of her than of me. That was until she failed her exams and went completely off the rails. Smoking, going to clubs even though she was underage, etc. etc. She became your typical rebellious teen, and my parents tried everything they could to stop her behavior: therapy, rehab, punishments, but nothing helped and she just became worse. Her relationship with my parents becomes seriously strained, and they more or less ignore her and just leave her to do whatever she wants. This means that they focus on me more, and I know how jealous it makes her. Our birthdays are 3 days apart, 23rd and the 26th of March. And on my 15th my parents bought me a lot of gifts, took me out to wherever I wanted to go, and just made my day amazing. However, for Chloe's 18th, my parents gave her a £50 gift card. When she saw the gift she blew up and started yelling that it was unfair to get her such a cheap gift after they spent hundreds on me. My parents told her to be grateful she's even getting a gift after they've had to spend thousands on trying to help her, and she started crying and accused them of favoring me, and I snapped and told her to shut up because it's her fault that our parents don't care about her, and maybe if she hadn't wasted her life away things would be different. She left the house and hasn't come back since. My parents haven't really told me I was wrong, just told me I should just learn to ignore her, but some of my friends have called me a bitch and said I should apologize. I just feel like she has no right to play the victim when she literally ruined her own life, and my parents had to use so much money to try and get her back on track, but I'd like to hear some more opinions. Hear me out. So my Bill, my husband's brother, was married to a woman from Greece. Her name is Nana, and the reason for their divorce was because of how much my conservative Bill tried to control her clothes and the places she went. He didn't want the divorce and was hoping Nana would accept the life he offered and stay, but she didn't. This happened 2 years ago. He now moved back with my in-laws and we'd see him more often. He tried to comment on how I dress on multiple occasions and it's unbearable. But since my in-laws said he's struggling and depressed, then I let it go. On Friday my in-laws celebrated my husband's 30th birthday at their home. I wore a heart-shaped blue dress and had my hair up. While we were eating, my Bill pointed at me and said that my cleavage was showing and that I shouldn't have wore this dress because it looked inappropriate for a family gathering. I was utterly shocked. Everyone was staring at me and I felt so embarrassed and on the spot. He looked at me waiting for me to blow up probably, but I laughed and told him, "Knock, knock." He said, "Who's there?" I said, "Nana." Now he paused and seemed confused at the mention of this name. He then faked a laugh and said, "Nana who?" I said, "Nana, your goddamn business what I'm wearing." Okay. He got upset and quickly left the table. My Sills laughed, but my husband and his parents were upset and later said that I was way out of line for bringing up Nana to my Bill, knowing how heartbroken and depressed he is because of her. His mom said that I was petty and didn't need to dig at him just to prove a point. My husband thinks I'm in the wrong as well and that I was being deliberately hurtful by bringing up Nana. Next story. Gosh, where do I even start? But before I do, sorry for any spelling or grammatical errors. Quite annoyed as of now. All of this started back in Jan. My husband has a long-term friend called N who was on the verge of homelessness and unable to find employment, or rather doesn't want to find employment. At first I was sympathetic because I barely knew him as one of my husband's childhood friend. I really felt sorry for the situation he was in, and when my husband requested that he get the guest room for a while I wholeheartedly agreed. N seemed okay at first, but slowly he started taking advantage of our kindness. N is a heavy drinker, and ever since he has been staying with us he has gotten my husband into drinking also. Not only drinking, once he gets drunk he is extremely crude and mocks me, and not even jokingly. He comments on my weight or tries to constantly set up my husband with other women in front of me as a joke. After eating the food I make he still gossips to my husband about me and they sit together and laugh. I don't find any of it funny. The more I try to let it go the worse he gets with his remarks and actions. He also invites random people into our house. One time I shouted at him because once I came back from work. I work part-time. And and his friends were all sitting around smoking and taking food from our pantry. The TV was scratched and the whole living room was messy with food and trash lying around. My jaw was on the floor at this man's audacity to cause a mess and invite literal strangers without permission while I was gone. Even though I constantly bring it up to my husband, he gets angry and tells me that I'm being insensitive about his difficult situation. No, I get that, but not when he is trashing our house and mocking me or ordering me around. At least have some respect and basic courtesy towards the people housing you like. Also has other disgusting qualities like ordering me around, which I obviously do not heed to. Even my husband does not do that. I am losing my mind, sleep and everything over this. There is no privacy, the house is always dirty, and because of this my husband and I have conflicts all the time. I really need him out. I literally confronted indirectly, and he said I was being selfish and a bitch and he would only go if my husband tells him, and that my opinion does not matter even though the house is in my thing name. Either sleeps the whole day, drinks or invites his friends over to trash our house. He doesn't look for a job or housing. I am terrified thinking about how long this is going to go on. He doesn't do anything to improve his situation. I am thinking of filing a police report or something. I really can't take it, but at the same time this stupid guilt in me is saying that despite who he is, if I kick him out and he ends up in the street, it would eat at my conscience. Aida for wanting him out? Edit. Thank you for all the advice. I am really so grateful for the informative solutions. I am reading and writing down what I need to do. Forgive me if I can't get to all of you. I am planning to get some legal advice first, which I might take on sometimes after work. Thank you to the person who brought up the 30-day eviction notice and keeping an evidence trail, which I will also be doing. As for my husband, I am terribly disappointed, but this was not the man I knew before N arrived. I think it is more of a friendship thing to impress N because they knew each other for so long. But for now my priority is getting N out of my house. Next story. My 17F parents divorced 10 years ago because my dad cheated on my mom. He married the other woman who had 2 kids, my stepsister Julia, 17F, and my stepbrother Josh, 14M. While my dad cheated, their mom didn't because their dad had already passed away. Before that I was a total daddy's girl. I adored him and I was glued to his hip. My mom encouraged me to keep a relationship with him after they split. His new wife family never paid much attention to me. They weren't mean nor good, but at first I always had to share my dad with them whenever I visited. If we went hiking or fishing, they had to come. If we went to the movies, had dinner outside or anything, they had to come. I remember I used to cry at night because I couldn't understand. This stopped when I turned 15 because I wanted to do something special with just my dad then, and when he said that we should invite my stepbrothers I just broke down crying, asking him why he never wanted to spend time with me alone. We had a long talk when I got to vent how awful I felt just sitting there waiting for him to turn his head and notice me, because if I tried to talk or have his attention, they would get in the middle while ignoring me, and he apologized. After that, we would spend more time one-to-one and just a very few instances with all of them. I won't lie, I really enjoyed it. I could really talk with my dad, do fun stuff and be around him without having to wait for my stepbrothers to stop talking to him or anything. Julia and I'll be graduating this summer. I got an early acceptance to my college of choice, and when I told my parents, both decided to do something to celebrate. My mom and I will be having a getaway weekend to the spa, and my dad said he would take me to the beach. I was honestly really excited, so I offered to pay for the hotel reservation because I wanted to feel mature. My dad said no a bunch of times, but I ended up convincing him. We were supposed to leave today, but when he came to pick me up, my stepsister was there. He said it was a surprise since both of his girls were graduating. Apparently she begged him to come with us and he agreed, saying that she could get his bed and he'll sleep on the floor between us. I could feel my eyes burning and I told him that this wasn't the deal. He tried to convince me, but he ended up leaving with her. In my rage, I called the hotel to cancel the room, and I didn't told my dad. When they arrived he tried to check in, and when he couldn't, he called me. I only said, "Yeah, I canceled it," and hung up. He sent me a long text apologizing, and my mom said that what I did wasn't okay and that I owe them an apology. Apparently they're on their way back because they couldn't find an hotel. ETA. As someone suggested, I'm adding this. The trip with my dad and the spa getaway with my mom was because I got an early acceptance, nor because I was graduating high school. That why Julia had no business being there. My dad did asked about inviting her and I said no. I also informed my dad that since he keeps hurting me and putting his other family above what I explicitly ask him for, then I would rather go and see with him, and that he was currently uninvited to my graduation. That this was the last time, and while I still love him and it hurts my heart that it has come to this, I can't keep doing it anymore. I asked him to not contact me again and I blocked him. As for my mom, I explained her everything, and after much crying from both parts, she apologized and hugged me because she didn't know. She's supporting my decision. Next story. I have a daughter, Wendy 14, and a niece, Claire 15. Claire lost both her parents when she was very little and I've been raising her ever since. Wendy and her mom live far away and she has custody, so I only see her once a month, so I have a closer relationship with Claire and we have a lot more in common, but I love them both equally. A while ago I got a bonus at work and I decided to go on a trip, but I couldn't afford to take both girls, and also the girls don't get along, which is mostly Claire's fault, I admit. So no one would have fun if I took them both, so I had to pick one, and since Wendy can go with her mom if she wants, I decided that it's only fair if I take Claire. So we went to the trip, but ever since then Wendy has stopped talking to me because she thinks it's not fair that I never take her anywhere and choose my niece over her, but I've raised Claire and I consider her my daughter, so I don't think I did anything wrong. My ex, however, is calling me an and says that I always favor Claire, but that's not true, so I Ada? Edit. Can y'all stop assuming so many horrible things about Claire? She is just a kid and the girls fight like all siblings do. Sometimes it's even Wendy who starts the fights. No one is bullying anyone here. I am not rewarding her, but if your kid does something wrong you can't punish them forever. I get it. I am gonna talk to both girls and see how I can fix this. I will update again. Edit 2. I made an update post but I don't know how to get it unlocked. If anyone is interested, you know where to find it. Next story. My sister is 30 and is married to a man who she, and our family, love. They've said they wanted to be child-free since they met 4 years ago. They had a nice life, where they both worked, have a dog, nice house, etc. About a year ago, he found out that he had a son. The mother was an acquaintance he slept with 6 years ago, who had never told him about him. She passed away, and her elderly mother has too many health issues for her to have custody. So he went to live with them. He's an amazing little kid, and our family has grown to love him too. So we were all shocked a month ago when my sister said her and him were going to separate. She said she loves her husband, but she can't take being a stepmother anymore, and that everything from not being able to watch adult shows at all hours of the day to asking him to do his homework makes her miserable. Her husband is absolutely devastated, as they have always had a happy marriage and still love each other. She'll be the first one to say this. He didn't want children either, but understands he's the only parent this boy has now. I also found out that this little boy is taking the fact that she's moving out and taking their dog. She was hers originally, very hard, no doubt due to the loss he's already experienced, and I felt devastated by that. When we were at our parents' house last weekend, I asked to talk to her, and after some back and forth, I told my sister it seemed wrong and selfish to hurt not only her husband but also her stepson this way, after not even a full year of trying to make it work. She didn't take that well and hasn't spoken to me since. Essentially, she said she's never wanted children and wants no part of raising one, and that I have no right to call her wrong or selfish over that. My family seems to agree with me on this, but my mom is very upset that my sister is furious with me and the family members that agree with me. I, 27F, used to be an escort, H-Oak, from 18 until I was 23. I'm not proud of it, but I also don't give a fuck because I did what I had to do to keep studying and a roof over my head. That's how I met my now fiancé, 37M, though he was never my client. We began to date when I was 25, and 3 or 4 months after that his bill exposed me. No idea how he found out, because there's no way my fiancé knew, and thus we had to come clean in front of his whole family. Yes, I did that. Yes, he knows. Yes, he doesn't care. It was 2 years ago. At that time, we got over it. After that there was a span of 3 to 4 months in where my mill and some of my fiancé's aunts and cousin, police, their husband when I was around, It was really weird tbh because this dudes were like 40 to 60 yo and I wasn't that desperate, so my fiancé shut their bullshit hard and even when his family still gives me the side eye from time to time, we thought it was behind us. He proposed last year and 5 months ago we found out that I was pregnant. We were really happy about it and we told his family as soon as we knew. His sisters and young brother were happy for us, but his mom took me aside and begged me to be honest with her and asked if this was really my fiancé's child. I was taken aback but I just rolled my eyes and said yes. She gave me some shitty speech about how she only wanted to make sure, and that she was happy to be a grandmother. Well, last weekend we were at his parents' with his family and some of his friends and we were talking about the name. How he might look, small talk. We will love him regardless but there's always some. Oh, I hope he gets your nose. MMH, I like your eyes. I hope he gets them, comments, and my Phil said that he and his children have a birthmark in the inner tight and that even his grandchildren, one of my SIL's kids, got them. So our baby might too, and then he said, but how can we know from who he got it? It may as well be from me, my boy or my brothers, and he and his brothers began to laugh. My fiancé got mad and before he could say anything I said, I don't get it, and my Phil was, yeah because it runs in the family, and I said again, I don't get it. Why would he get it from you? And he began to get nervous and said, because you know. Later my fiance, it's just a joke op, and I said, but I don't get it and you all laughed. Explain, it got to the point that some of his friends said, hey, it's not funny, so he excused himself and left. Later my fiancé's Bill came to me and said that I was wrong for embarrassing him like that in his own house and that I knew what the joke was about and because of my past, I shouldn't be surprised. Now they're all demanding that I apologize to my Phil. Next story. I, 32F, have been married to my husband, 35M, for 3 years. We dated for 2 years before that. I want to start this off by saying that he really is a good guy in other areas. My husband's parents, his 2 brothers, ages 38 and 40-ish, and his brother's girlfriends, fiancés have a tradition of going out to dinner once a month. I am invited about 50% of the time. I've talked to my husband's brother's fiancé, and she says she is invited every time. When I say I'm not invited, I mean that my husband tells me, I'm going to the family dinner. It's probably best if you sit this one out. When I expressed that I wanted to come, he told me that it would be for the best if I didn't. It has caused several fights. About a week ago, my husband went to a family dinner that I wasn't invited to. I was very pissed. So earlier that day, I called and made a reservation at the restaurant they were going to. My husband left the house, not knowing about my reservations, and I left 15 minutes after him. I ended up seated at a table where I couldn't see his family. So I got up as if I was going to the bathroom and walked right past them. They were all there, including his brother's SOs. My husband looked completely shocked and asked me what I was doing there. I told him that I had just been dying for a steak, so I came and got one at the restaurant. My mother-in-law said it was very rude of me to interrupt their family dinner. I pointed out that I wasn't trying to join them, I was just going to the bathroom. I told them to have a good meal and I left. I went and finished my steak by myself. My husband was really pissed when he came home, and he told me that he couldn't believe how much of an asshole I had been. I said that he was an asshole for not inviting me to his dinners when his brother's SOs got to go. My husband said that the decision to invite was between him and his family, and I should respect it. Anyway, with the way the word asshole was thrown around, it made me think of this sub. So I wanted to ask if I am the asshole. Next story. The situation is kind of a mess. I, F27, am expecting my first baby with my husband. This is the first grandchild in the family, in-laws, and they said that if the baby's a boy then we'll give him my father-in-law's name. He's dead due to cancer. I had no problem with that. This happened before we found out the gender of the baby. My husband and his family had me do things, like attend prayers and do other rituals before the reveal at the DRS. I didn't like that but went with it to keep the peace. Doctor appointment came, and it turned out to be a girl. My husband cried in the car then turned his phone off to hide from his family then finally told them. His mom and the others made their frustration and disappointment clear which bothered me cause my daughter deserves to be celebrated but They ghosted me for days, then started coming over and visiting, constantly referring to my daughter as my son, claiming the results were false and basically pretending it's a boy. I had severe fights with them after they refused to stop it, and my husband sided with them despite seeing how wrong and unreasonable what they were doing was. We didn't speak for a while. Sister-in-law called to apologize, then informed me she arranged for a baby shower for me. I was so excited and happy. But when I arrived I saw blue balloons, blue cake with father-in-law's name, decorations around. I was so confused I had to sit down. Sister-in-law explained they were, still, hoping the gender results are false and it's a boy. I looked at my husband and he agreed with her. I lost my temper and yelled at them all, calling them delusionals and telling them to stop treating my daughter like she's unwanted and act like she doesn't exist by throwing a party for their imaginary grandson. Mother-in-law broke down crying. I took my bag and walked out immediately. They started yelling and my husband followed me outside and started arguing about how I insulted his family and his dad's memory by acting like that. I told him to wake up and see the insanity in his family's behavior. He said they needed time to process the fact that it's a girl not a boy as they expected, and insisted I play along and they'll soon get over it. I said absolutely not and demanded he take me home. He said no, so I called an Uber and left. He was fuming. He called 15 times, then texted that he won't be coming home till I get my ass over and apologize for ruining everything they've done for me and accusing them of being mentally unstable. I haven't responded yet. He's constantly pressuring me to get right with his family before we even talk about anything else. Next story. I am one of few women in a company that is male-dominated. I also happen to be a nursing mother and pump at work. The problem arises when I wash my pump parts. For those of you who don't know, there are several plastic parts that need to be washed after each use. I pump, store the bags of milk in a bag in the freezer, wash the parts in the sink, then bring them back to my office to dry. The one thing that doesn't return with me to my office is a special brush. I found a spot in the back of a rarely used cupboard to stash it, as it has a spongy end that would make a mess bringing it back and forth to my office. Plus it's more convenient. Once I was going through my cleaning routine and a coworker came in the break room. We chatted politely, and when I reached into the back cabinet to grab the brush he asked what it was. I told him that it was for cleaning pump parts, and he was obviously grossed out and left immediately. This is pretty common. Most of the men I work with are single and/or don't have kids, and they are uncomfortable with the concept of lactation. The next time I came into the break room I saw my bottle brush out on the sink. It has bits of cheese on it, and had clearly been used to wash someone's dishes. Since the culprit wasn't around, I left a note saying, "Please don't use my brush in the cabinet, it's for breast pump parts only, but use the one on the sink." I just decided to sacrifice it and bring in a new one the next day. The next day about noon the note was gone and my new brush was out on the sink with the old one. I didn't know if it had been used or not, so I didn't risk it and just washed my parts by hand with a paper towel and brought in a third brush. The following day I happened to bump into the coworker from before, using one of the two brushes to wash out a coffee cup. I ignored him and waited for him to finish at the sink, but he took forever, clearly just wasting time. He even scrubbed out the sink two-handed with each of the brushes on the sink. Finally he stopped and told me that anything kept in the break room is fair game, and I didn't have privileges for a special dish sponge. In my one-on-one with my boss later I told him the situation and that I was going to bring it to HR, but he said my coworker was right and I should just keep the brush in my office. He said he'd talk to my coworker about it, but he's not this guy's manager, and they're friends, and I doubt he would tell him to stop. I already decided to keep the brush in my office, but I still wrote up the HR complaint. I haven't sent it yet, and now I'm not sure. That guy is a jerk, but I don't know that I have any solid grounds for a complaint. WIBTA if I sent it anyway? Some context. I had mastitis, a common infection, early on while I was on maternity leave. It was painful and miserable, and the best way to prevent it is to keep the parts clean and wash them with a clean brush, which is why I'm so diligent about keeping a brush only for pump parts. Next story. 20 meters, has two younger siblings, Joe and Jill. They're twins, both 18 and graduating high school this year. Jill is my parents' favorite, because they've always wanted a daughter, while Joe is their scapegoat, because I guess he's the bonus baby they never actually asked for. I'm mostly better off than Joe, as I'm the oldest grandson from both sides of my family, almost all of whom are just as blatant as my parents are about their favoritism. I felt really bad for Joe, so I did what I could to make him feel less alone. Like when Jill got to go shopping with mommy and daddy, I took Joe skating with my friends. When our parents were too busy watching Jill's kitty pageant, I dragged my best bud to sit through Joe's elementary school musical. Small things like that. It all started as pity moves, but soon my friends pretty much liked Joe better than me, while Jill's princess syndrome got in her head, so now I spend more time with Joe because I simply like him better than Jill. Never said it out loud, but I don't make it a secret either that I prefer not to spend my time with entitled brats. Anyway, like I said, they're graduating soon. They both already had their choice of college, accommodations, etc. Jill's going to a uni in SF, fully funded by our parents, unsurprisingly. Joe's going to the same uni as mine in Seattle, but different campus just 20-ish minutes away. He got a full ride, which apparently makes him ineligible to get any financial help from his own parents. This is also hardly surprising, so I made some calls to ask around, see if anyone is hiring next fall. I did this while on FaceTime with Joe. I was reassuring him that we'll find him a job that don't suck and pays enough, that he's better off without dad's money anyway because we both know it comes with strings attached, that this way, mom and dad wouldn't be able to stick their noses into his purchases. I got him to feel better about the whole thing and logged off. I guess Jill overheard, because the next day she sent me texts after texts demanding I help her find jobs as well because she doesn't want dad nagging her. When I told her, politely BTW, that I don't know anyone in SF, and that she'd get more help from mom and dad, she blew up, saying all these things about me favoring Joe over her, which, yeah. It's true, I love both of my siblings, but I don't particularly like Jill. I, F25, have been with my boyfriend, Jake, M34, for 8 months. Things were fine until I, against my better judgment, moved into his place a couple months ago. Since then, he's been getting kind of possessive and protective. I immediately told him to cut that shit out because it's off-putting, and things seem to get better. Anyway, I have a friend in Mexico who is getting married. I've been excited to fly down for her wedding since she told me she was engaged a year ago. However, Jake has made it clear that he doesn't want me to go. He says Mexico is too dangerous, even though I've been there many times and even lived there for a year, speak Spanish, have friends there, and know my way around. No matter what I say, he doesn't want me to go. Then a couple of days ago my passport went missing from my nightstand. I'm supposed to go tomorrow, so I wouldn't have time to get a new one. I looked everywhere, no luck. When I asked Jake about it, he behaved a little suspiciously, but I dismissed it because I couldn't believe he would actually take my passport to keep me from going. But he's been giving me some red flags, so I decided to have a thorough look around. When he went out this morning, I started going through everything. As I searched, I became increasingly certain that he took my passport. I started off carefully picking through drawers and cabinets, but as my anger grew, I became a lot less careful. I started turning out drawers, pried open a briefcase, made a total mess. But I found it. It was behind some books on the bookcase in his study. I never go into his study. He definitely put it there. Now he's furious with me for going through his things and ransacking his place. He said he would have given my passport back, and there was no need for me to go crazy. I'm just angry that he took it to begin with, and I don't believe him when he says he was going to give it back. This is only my third serious relationship, and I have no perspective on this kind of thing. Iata for overreacting and ransacking my ex-boyfriend's place? Edit. Thanks for the replies. I guess I was still in a weird state of disbelief that he did that, and it made me question everything. Now that I've stopped shaking and have had the time to think, talk to my mom, and to read through these replies, I feel kinda silly for even wondering if I did something wrong. Suffice it to say it's over for good. I've blocked him on everything and my dad and brother are over there getting what's left of my stuff. I'm going to try to put it out of my mind and focus on my awesome trip. Next story. I'm not lactose intolerant. I buy hazelnut milk because I like to have hazelnut syrup in my coffee, and adding hazelnut milk makes it even more nutty. My flatmate is severely lactose intolerant though and has been drinking my milk ever since she moved in a few months ago. I don't have an issue sharing milk with her, but the issue is that she drinks so much of it all day every day that I'll get a single cup of coffee out of an entire carton. Sometimes she'll drink the entire carton before I've even had a single drink, and then she never replaces it or refunds me or even acknowledges that it wasn't hers to drink. At some point she stopped buying her own milk and I was having to buy new milk daily. I asked her many times why she was drinking my milk, and said that if she does can she just buy a new carton, and she would say sorry and that she just grabbed the first milk she saw and that she'd get me a new one but just never would. She started getting annoyed when I brought it up and would say I was being overdramatic when I mentioned how much it was costing me. Last week I got sick of it and decided to go back to drinking dairy milk, thinking that as she's severely lactose intolerant she would stop and buy her own milk. I thought wrong. The dairy milk is clearly labeled. It has a bright red label on it that says cow's milk, but she still helped herself. Unfortunately, the day she decided to drink dairy milk was the day she had a new job interview, and the effects of the dairy-laced coffee she took with her kicked in as she was in the middle of it and she didn't make it in time. She came home absolutely furious and laid into me about how I ruined her life. How this job was the opportunity she needed and I destroyed it for her by being a selfish cunt, and that I did it deliberately because I was too uptight to share my milk. Here are the reasons why my flatmate thinks I am in the wrong. I knew she was lactose intolerant and so knew if she drank my milk she would get violently ill, so by switching to dairy milk when I knew she was drinking my milk and might potentially drink it again I was putting her at risk. She also said that sharing milk isn't a big deal and that I'm selfish. She thinks I was overreacting and being cruel just for the sake of it and that I should have spoken to her about it instead of secretly changing milks. She has threatened to report me to the police, but I don't think she has a leg to stand on. Regardless, she is making our flat very uncomfortable to live in. She's taken my leftovers from the fridge and opened up my milk and left it to ruin. Leaves all her mess everywhere for me to clean up and has misplaced documents of mine. Next story. So me and my partner adopted our daughter 2 years ago. We don't have any biological children, and we don't really plan to just yet. Our daughter is 6 years old now. She does understand that she's adopted, and we've made it clear time and time again that even though she didn't come from my belly, we still love her and treat her as if she did. The other day, I took her to a pediatrician because she said that one of her ears felt full. She did have a cold last week, so that was expected, and he said that her ear would drain out eventually. All good. The nurse comes in with the discharge sheet, and commented that she would have never assumed that I was the mother of my daughter since I looked nothing like her, which I don't, for obvious reasons. So then I said, oh yeah, we adopted her so that's why she doesn't look me or my husband. Then, this nurse goes, oh okay, so she isn't your daughter. I was a little confused because I thought I had just explained this whole situation. I said again, she is my daughter, we adopted her a few years back. The nurse says, but technically she isn't your daughter, and her real mom is somewhere else. I was really upset because what the actual fuck? I said again, but she is my daughter and I am her mom. The nurse kind of sighed and said, okay, maybe legally you are, but her real mom is the one that gave birth to her. My daughter was looking up at me kind of confused, and I can't even imagine what was going through her head. I had enough. I said to this nurse, what the hell is wrong with you? I keep telling you that I am her mother, and you keep denying that, in front of my daughter no less. The nurse goes, I'm just stating a fact. Biologically she's not yours. I went again, yeah. Because she's adopted. We adopted her and gave her a home. What, I have to push her out my vagina to be her mother? The nurse goes, well, that's the dictionary definition of what a mom is. I had enough. I told her to wash her mouth of the bullshit she had been saying at me and my daughter, and I left and went home. I was really shaken up at this point and was still when we got home and my husband noticed. I told him what had happened. He told me that the nurse was really dumb for saying that, but I shouldn't have blown up on her like that. Next story. What's going on right now has been really difficult on everyone. My son Jack, 26M, just left his wife of 3 years after finding out she's been having an affair. He didn't want me to know the details at all, just insisted only me and him spend time together somewhere public. I thought it was because he just didn't want anyone to know what was going on, but it was really because my other son Andrew, 27M, was living with me and he didn't want to see him. Jack told me he's running out of money and can't afford the motel he's staying at right now. But he refused to come back to live with me while he goes through the divorce. He finally told me Andrew is the one his wife cheated with. To say I was disgusted and horrified is an understatement. That night I gave Andrew a piece of my mind and told him he's not longer welcome in my home. The reason he was living with me was also because of his financial problems since he was out of work due to COVID. This entire time he knew what was going on but acted like the innocent party until I confronted him. He pleaded with me not to throw him out when he has no place to go. But I told him as of right now I only have one child because we sure as heck didn't raise our kids to betray their own family and involve themselves in someone else's marriage. Since he's been living with Maya while he was given a time frame to pack up his things and leave. Once he was out, Jack came to stay with me but haven't heard the end of it from my ex-in-laws or his mom. Who conveniently cannot house him either, for one thing because they're back in their home country, and they are yelling at me for playing favorites with my kids and punishing Andrew when he was already in a rough spot. They believe as their father I should have mediated between them so they could learn to live together. But I wasn't about to put Jack through that. He wants nothing to do with Andrew and I feel like I need to respect that, not make them hug it out and make up. I'm also just very angry at Andrew and frankly don't want to be around him at all either. Yes, right now he's stuck crashing at different friends' houses. He keeps begging to come back because everything has been hard. Does it make me an asshole to not help him out? Next story. My boyfriend's parents paid for them, my boyfriend's siblings and their son to all go on a flight to Cabo for spring break. Becky, his mom, hasn't seemed to like me for some reason. She always makes snide remarks about my parents' blue-collar jobs and my field as nursing. We get to the airport and Becky got 7 other people first-class tickets and me 1 coach ticket. She told me I was used to it and she had a free coach ticket so I should be grateful for going. They all did their express check-ins and left me in the long line for me to think about what the heck is going on. I had to keep from crying the whole time in line. I got up to the counter and there was a baggage fee to me. My boyfriend at the time never once helped me through the coach line or said anything to his mom. I looked over at his mom's smug face as I was about to pay the checked baggage fee. And I let all of my frustrations out on the attendant and started crying. Basically she said, "Don't go with that family, sweetie, they don't appreciate you." Continues to cry and took my luggage and got out of line with the super sweet check-in woman. I was so upset on how I was treated and started crying on my boyfriend in the airport about how his mother was treating me. I broke up with him at the airport and his mother was so embarrassed. I told her what a bitch she was. My boyfriend has been blowing up my phone saying how could I do that to his mother and just back out of a vacation very last minute and wasted everyone's time and money. My 31F, dear brother, 26M, decided to propose to his GF few weeks ago. We went ring shopping together and he picked a ring he thought she'd like. After all, we picked a classic piece and you can never go wrong with a classic piece. He proposed and all was well. That was until I saw them again 2 days ago after their proposal and I noticed my brother's fiancée has a different ring than the one we picked. I of course asked and she shamelessly admitted that she didn't like the OG ring so they went and changed it for another one she liked better. I told her that's a really weird thing of her to do and that she should be happy and grateful. After all, the ring was a classic so it could fit anyone's style. She said that she had previously sent pics of what styles of rings she likes to my brother and she's not into the classic pieces anyway, and she was disappointed how my brother ignored her own taste and opinion and got something she was clear from the start she wouldn't like. And that they after all agreed to go change the ring. I asked for the price of the new ring and apparently it was the same price as the OG one. But I doubt that. The ring looked way more expensive. And it was not even a classic diamond like the first one but instead a huge emerald stone which would not fit in many occasions. I told my brother that if I were him I'd call off the engagement and have a serious talk with my partner because what his fiancée did is unacceptable behavior. My brother said I'm being rude and how I should mind my business because he is fine with his fiancée's choice of changing the ring. He also said he's the one at fault for getting the other ring so I better stop acting like an aw. I insisted that this is very rude and ungrateful for someone to do and that she should be happy she at least got a proposal and a ring. My brother and his fiancée both got mad at me and now think I'm an aw for implying such thing. Next story. Background. Girlfriend and I have been together almost 4 years. She moved into my house about 2 years ago. She has a cat who up until this point has been very friendly and a good cat overall. Minus the typical scratching, barfing, meowing for food at 5 a.m. I recently paid to have the basement finished. The very first day we moved the couch down there he peed all over it. That was a couple weeks ago, and since then he's done it multiple times, not just on the couch but also on the rug and our beanbag chair. I told her the cat has to go because I'm not going to allow a cat to pee all over my stuff and stink up the house. She cried and said fine, she will just get an apartment and live with the cat. She took it to the vet and they gave it anxiety medicine, but it's not working. We tried putting its food down there so it doesn't pee, didn't work. Everyone I've talked to said once they start they don't stop. I have a daughter and her and my girlfriend are pretty close, we all are. But she wants to live with a cat rather than us, which to me is a red flag. Next story. I have a son, Adam 14, from my previous marriage. I'm currently with my husband of 4 years. I handle everything related to Adam's school. He has a friend, Dean 14, that he started hanging out with a year ago. Dean is an amazing boy and has been nothing but a great influence for Adam. I met Dean's dad, Mike, who's a single dad, and we'd see each other daily for school pickup, drop-offs. My husband kept asking about Mike and pointed out that he's being boundary stomping, but I disagree. Unfortunately, Adam fell sick months ago and had to undergo a surgery recently. It's been hard, but Dean kept visiting. Sometimes Mike would come too, and my husband would either ignore Mike or make passive comments towards him. Mike picked up on that and I told my husband to knock it off cause his hostility affected Adam and Dean as well. Days ago, I found Adam crying in his room. This was weeks after getting discharged. I asked and he said that Dean sent him a text telling him they were no longer friends and blocked his number. I was confused, they were fine. I wanted to go talk to Dean, but the next day I found his phone in my husband's car. I confronted him and he said he borrowed it from Dean, but I didn't buy it. After pushing, he confessed that he stole Dean's phone at the hospital and sent Adam a text telling him to not contact him again. I asked why and he said it was all Mike's fault for being too close to me and acting inappropriately, and said that he didn't want to directly tell Adam to no longer speak to Dean and chose this strategy to not make Adam hate him while keeping Dean and by extension Mike away. This hit a nerve so hard I started screaming at him. He said he already expressed how uncomfortable he felt with Mike being around and I kept brushing it off. I said it was because of how ridiculous his argument was. Mike has been nothing but respectable and helpful. I yelled, calling him insecure and unreasonable and also cruel for causing Adam heartache with his stunt. He begged I don't tell Adam, but I took the phone and returned it to Dean and explained to him and Adam what happened. Adam is no longer speaking to my husband and he is blaming me for telling instead of keeping it between the adults like I'm supposed to. Next story. Since we moved into our house 3 years ago, my husband lives in his man cave. The walkout basement that he plays video games in mostly is a 1-bed, 1-bath with a small bar area that can serve as a kitchen. He only comes up for food, to prep for work or to sleep, and it's been bothering me because he never helps with the housework or our 2 sons. But at least he goes to work, so I let it go and leave him be. 5 months ago he was laid off his job and has been applying for another one in sales. Right now he's collecting unemployment, and along with my teacher's salary it isn't enough to cover everything. My son, 9M, has been playing guitar for 4 years and loves it. But his lessons in guitar are quite expensive, around $300 a month, and my other son does kickboxing, which is $170 a month. I didn't want them to have to give up their activities, so I looked for other ways to make money. My husband is very prideful and won't work a job beneath him. I've already tried to convince him to work a $16 per hour cashier job for our family friend, and he refuses because it would be humiliating having friends see him work at a cash register at 37-year-old. So I found that we could rent the basement out for $1,100 a month and it would allow my sons to stay with their activities. I told my husband, who refused, saying it was his space. I argued I didn't get a space, and if he wanted to keep it he should get a job while he's looking for another sales job. He got angry and told me it was his house and he won't allow it being rented out. We both put down payments and we both make money in this house, but it's his house? I told him we are not making ends meet and he told me to cancel all unnecessary spending including our son's activities. I argued if he got a job or agreed to rent out the downstairs they wouldn't have to and he said that wasn't his problem. I posted it on Facebook just to see if anyone would be interested and a student reached out. She is a college student who wanted to rent and it was a perfect fit because she didn't have a pet and was going to be gone most of the day anyway. I said okay and went excited to my husband who was really pissed saying we aren't renting out his space. I was pissed he wouldn't sacrifice anything for our sons when I'm working and raising them and he isn't working now but isn't doing anything to help. I told him I was moving out with our sons and I think he recognized I was serious and gave up and told me to do whatever I wanted. I moved his gaming stuff to our living room and the student moved in today. He is still pissed that I undermined him and I feel kind of bad because I didn't want to make the decision without his agreement but at the same time I feel he was selfish to refuse to either get a job or give up his man cave for our sons to continue their activities and keep us from going into debt. Next story. My cousin Rick and his wife Leah have an 18-year-old daughter Meg. Leah mentioned to me, at a family reunion, that Meg was planning on going to college for computer science, just like I did. I didn't really want to get into my thoughts about that so I said, cool, and Rick made a comment to me that he was hoping I'd have some advice for her since I'd done a CS degree too. I said, I'm not sure y'all are going to like what I have to say. Rick said, how so? And Meg said, I'd like to hear it. I said, okay, honestly my first piece of advice is, don't. If I could go back in knowing what I know now, I never would have started that degree. Leah asked what the hell I was talking about. Meg had an aptitude for it. Meg said that she also really loved it, she was in the robotics club at school. And she wanted to know what I was talking about. I gave her a brief rundown of my career. I was sold on the whole girl power, corporate feminism that I grew up with. I went to college and found the curriculum doable, but the amount of sexism and harassment I dealt with from peers and professors really difficult. I graduated and found industry was even worse than college. I left my first job due to sexual harassment from my direct manager and later his manager, and HR's retaliation against me for reporting. I found a new job and the cycle repeated. At 28, I've quit 3 jobs, all due to persistent sexual harassment that HR and management would either not address or would actively contribute to. I had made a group of female friends and mentors at the start of my career. 9 years later, these women I looked up to as role models have all left the industry. I feel pretty hopeless seeing the people I looked up to all couldn't handle it, so how can I? I said that if I could go back, I'd trade all the money I made in this field for my mental health and my personal safety. You can't put a price on those things. Meg said she wanted to talk more, and wanted to trade numbers with me. I was about to give her mine when Rick slammed a hand down on the table and told me no. He told me that it was completely inappropriate of me to try to talk his daughter out of a good career. I interjected to say, did you miss everything I said? It isn't a good career. It doesn't matter how much it pays if it's not safe. He told me to shut the fuck up and not speak to his daughter again, that it wasn't my place to ruin his daughter's future. I got irritated and said, I'm not trying to ruin her future, I'm trying to be realistic about what she can expect. Like I wish someone was with me. But I did walk off since he was getting pretty heated. I haven't heard from them since. Next story. My F26 husband, M26, works long days. Pretty much 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., sometimes even later. He is a utility locator, if that's helpful. And spring-summer is the busiest time. He sets his alarm for 5:30 a.m. every morning, even on weekends because he is fearful of it not working when it needs to. No matter how many times I try to explain that you can set a schedule for it. We don't actually get up right when the alarm goes off. We generally push snooze until it's 6 or 6:30. His workday starts whenever he gets in his company vehicle and drives to a ticket. Why he sets it for 5:30 is a mystery. I am not a morning person, and he is the one who presses snooze. I repeat, I am not a morning person. And lately, I have been having trouble sleeping. Yet my husband insists that I get up with him so I can make his work lunch. Well, today, I had a particularly hard time getting up. And while getting up, I was in a fog. So I moved slower than normal. I had decided to give him leftover pasta salad and make him a sandwich to go with it. Whilst I was in the kitchen, he received 3 emergency calls, which meant he had to leave before I could finish packing his lunch. I hadn't even pulled out the salad yet due to having trouble finding any deli meat for his sandwich. He began rushing me and telling me, "This is why I pester you to get up.